stepped down from the landing platform of his ship with careful steps. The gravity on this human world was slightly different from what he expected. His blue skin felt tight under the environmental suit as he looked at the settlement before him. The humans had built their colony on this planet only 3 years ago and could see how basic their structures were. Compared to the great towers of his own world, these buildings looked weak and temporary. The human commander approached him with an open hand, recognized this as a human greeting ritual. He had read about these things in the diplomatic files. The commander was a woman named Grant, and her military uniform showed the insignia of leadership. Shook her hand quickly, the way the files had taught him to do. "Welcome to our colony," said with a smile. "We are honored to have leadership visit us." Nodded without returning the smile. He did not understand why humans smiled so much. It served no practical purpose. "I am here to assess the military readiness of your colony. The High Council wants to ensure this settlement is not a liability to galactic security." Smile did not fade but saw something change in her eyes. She was good at hiding her reaction, he thought. Still, she was only human. Her species was limited in so many ways. They lived short lives. They needed constant rest and food. They could not process information at the speed his people could. They relied on crude tools and weapons compared to technology. "We understand," said. "Our colony has grown well. We have over 2,000 people here now. We grow our own food, produce our own energy, and maintain a small military force of about 300 trained soldiers." 300 soldiers. Almost laughed. The battle group in orbit above the planet had 300 soldiers as well, but they were vastly superior in every way. Each soldier had enhanced strength, faster reaction times, and access to advanced weaponry. Humans were so fragile in comparison. "Show me your defenses," said. Took him through the colony. Saw the military base, the weapons storage, the communication center. Everything was simple and crude, but he had to admit the humans had done what they could with limited resources. Spoke about their defensive plans. She seemed intelligent, even for a human, but intelligence could only go so far when your species was biologically limited. The tour ended at the command center. They were standing before a large map of the planet whence communication device began to pulse with urgent signals. His heart rate increased. This was not a regular message. This was a war alert. He activated the device and heard the voice of his fleet commander, Admiral Orr. The words came fast and hard. A massive invasion fleet had appeared in the system. They were identified as forces. They had arrived without warning. They had already destroyed 2 of the patrol ships. They were moving toward the planet at high speed. Felt something he had never felt before. He felt fear. They were one of the most brutal species in the known galaxy. They conquered worlds and destroyed civilizations without mercy. They were larger than stronger, and they seemed to have no interest in negotiation or peace. An invasion meant only one thing: death. "What is it?" asked, seeing the change in his face. "They are coming," said. "My fleet detected them just moments ago. They are moving toward this planet. I do not understand how this happened. My scanners should have detected them. This is not possible." His face went pale. "How long do we have?" 20 minutes, perhaps less." Moved immediately. She activated all the alarms in the colony. Her soldiers began running to their positions. She turned to with a steady voice. "My people are not trained for galactic warfare. We were not built for combat against an advanced military force, but we will fight. This is our home. These are our families. We do not have another choice." Wanted to tell her that they had no chance. That would destroy them easily. His battle group was damaged and unprepared. The human soldiers were weak and undertrained. The sensible choice would be to evacuate the civilians and retreat, but he could see would not allow that. She would stand and fight, even if it meant dying. "Your soldiers cannot fight thee alone," said. "You need my help. You need weapons and support." "Then fight with us," said simply. "Help us protect our people. That is all I ask." thought about his orders. He had come to assess whether these humans were worth protecting. Now he had his answer. They were weak and limited and fragile, but they had courage. He had seen it in his eyes when she accepted that her colony would fight even against impossible odds. "I will coordinate with your forces," said, "but understand this, we may lose, you may lose everything." "Then we lose," said, "but we will not lose without a fight." The first explosion shook the colony before it could respond. The ships had entered the atmosphere. Their weapons began raining fire down on the settlements. People screamed and ran. The defense systems that had shown him moments before began firing back, but the damage was heavy and immediate. Moved to the communication system and activated his fleet. He told Admiral or about his position in the human colony. He told him to send every soldier and every weapon they had to defend this location. It was not a tactical decision based on military value. It was something else. It was a choice to stand beside people he had thought were beneath him only moments ago. Grabbed his arm, her grip was firm. "Then we are allies now." "We are allies now," agreed. The bombardment continued. Fire spread across the colony. Humans and would fight together or they would both fall. There was no longer any choice. There was only the battle ahead and the fear that gripped both of them as they prepared to face an enemy more terrible than they had ever known. Gave her orders to her soldiers. Gave his orders to his forces. For the first time in his life, would fight beside humans. He did not know if it would be the best decision or the worst decision. He only knew that Grant had called them allies, and he would not abandon them to face the alone. The trenches were dug quickly by the humans. Watch from his position as men and women worked without stopping, moving dirt and building walls to defend against the coming assault. The would land ground forces soon, and the colony would need every protection it could create. A human sergeant named approached with a weapon in his hands, was tall for a human with dark skin and focused eyes. He did not show fear, even though could hear his heart rate increase from this enhanced hearing. Was afraid, but he was fighting through it. "Sir," said, using the formal address that humans often preferred, "we have positioned the remaining defense guns along the perimeter. We can hold the line for maybe 1 hour before we need to fall back. After that, we will have to retreat to the inner compound where the civilians are sheltering." Looked at the defensive positions. They were crude and simple, but they showed intelligence. The humans had used the natural terrain to create protected firing positions. They had overlapping fields of fire so that attacking forces would be hit from multiple angles. It was not the most advanced defense system had ever seen, but it was good work for a species that had never faced a true war. "How many soldiers do you have ready for combat?" asked. 273, said. "We have another 280 protecting the civilian areas. Most of them are not trained for combat situations. They are farmers, engineers, medical workers, but they will fight if we ask them to." Nodded. The humans were about to learn what real war was. Their farming and engineering skills would not matter much when they came, but their willingness to stand and fight despite knowing this fact was something had not expected from his reading of human history. "I am going to position my soldiers throughout your defenses," said. "Each group of your people will have support. My weapons are more advanced. My soldiers are faster. We will hold the line together." "Thank you," said. He meant it. Could hear the sincerity in his voice. They arrived an hour later. Their landing ships descended through clouds of smoke and fire. The ground shook as they touched down. Then the doors opened and the true enemy emerged. They were massive. They were nearly twice the height of, with thick bodies covered in hard, black armor-like skin. Their weapons were crude and powerful, designed for raw destruction rather than precision. They did not use strategy or tactics the way civilized species did. They simply attacked, crushing everything before them. The first wave of warriors charged toward the defensive trenches, and his soldiers opened fire with their rifles. The weapons made loud sounds and flashed with light. They fell, one after another, their thick bodies hitting the ground hard. But more came, always more. Weapons were silent in comparison. They fired thin beams of energy that cut through armor like it was soft material. Where 5 human bullets might slow a warrior, one blast would put it down permanently. Found himself impressed with how the humans continued fighting even though they could see how superior the weapons were. They did not give up. They did not panic. They simply kept doing their job. Fought beside. The human sergeant was quick and accurate with his weapon. He was not as strong as, and he could not see in the infrared spectrum the way could, but he had something else. He had the ability to read the fighting and adjust his position based on what was happening around him. He used his human weakness as an advantage, always staying behind his stronger allies, always supporting their positions. "Your species fights well together," said to during a brief moment of quiet. "I did not expect this level of coordination." "Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years," said, reloading his rifle with quick, practiced movements. "We have learned that you do not survive by being the strongest. You survive by being smart and by protecting the person next to you. Every soldier here will die to keep the others alive." This was something he had not read about in his research. The military was strong because individual soldiers were powerful. They did not need to rely on cooperation the way humans seem to. But watching and his soldiers move together, with each person covering the other's blind spots, supporting their allies, began to see the power in this approach. The battle lasted through the night. Wave after wave of came. Each time the humans and stopped them, but the cost was high. By morning, 23 human soldiers were dead. 7 were gone as well. The trenches were covered in blood, both red and blue. Grant appeared on the line at dawn. She was covered in dirt and blood. Her uniform was torn, but she was standing. She walked along the trenches, speaking to her soldiers, thanking them, encouraging them. When she reached, she put her hand on his shoulder. "We survived the night," she said, "because you stood with us. Your people saved our lives." "Your people fought well," said. "I underestimated you. This is a weakness in my thinking and I acknowledge it." Smiled, even though there was nothing to smile about. "We are not so different. You and I, we both want to protect our people. We both will stand against enemies. We both know that sometimes you have to fight even when you are afraid." The sensors showed more forces coming. Knew the second day of fighting would be harder than the first. They would change their tactics. They would learn from what had happened during the night, but no longer thought about running. He no longer thought about retreat. He was standing beside humans and they were standing beside him. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Approached again with updated reports on ammunition and casualty counts. Listened carefully and issued new orders. The human sergeant listened without question and moved quickly to carry out what it asked. This was something that surprised most of all. The humans trusted him. Despite the fact that he had doubted them and insulted them with his mind if not his words, they had chosen to trust him when their lives depended on it. As the sun rose over the colony, stood in the trenches beside and the other human soldiers. His fear had not gone away. It was still there, underneath everything. But it was no longer the fear of fighting beside weak allies. It was the fear of losing them. It was the fear that despite everything they could do, they might not be enough to stop them from taking this world and destroying these people who had shown him the true meaning of courage. The medical facility was the heart of the colony. Inside, nearly 300 civilians were sheltering. Most were the elderly and the very young, children too small to fight, mothers who would not abandon their sons and daughters, people who depended on the soldiers to keep them alive. On the morning of the third day, they concentrated their attacks on this location. It was not a random choice. They were brutal, but they were not stupid. They knew that destroying the civilians would break the human spirit. It was a tactic designed to force surrender or defeat. The outer defenses around the medical facility were thin. Could see the problem immediately. Had to spread her remaining soldiers across a wide area, and this location had been left with fewer fighters. They saw this weakness, and they attacked hard. Appeared at the command post with determination in her eyes. She had not slept in 2 days. Her uniform was stained with blood and dirt. But when she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "We are going to hit them back," said. "A direct assault. We are going to take back the ground we lost yesterday. I will lead the attack personally." Felt something pull inside his chest. He understood what was doing. This attack had almost no chance of success. The forces at the medical facility were too strong, but if did not lead this attack, her soldiers would lose confidence. They would push forward and reach the civilians. The only way to hold them was to stand firm and show strength, even if that strength came at the cost of human lives. "I will come with you," said. Shook her head. "No, I need you here to coordinate the defense of the northern position. If they break through there, all our people die. You are the only commander with the weapons and the ability to stop them." "Then you will die," said bluntly. "Perhaps," said, "but I will not sit and watch while they kill children and elderly people who cannot fight back. This is not something your people understand. This is something human. We protect the weak, even when it costs us everything." Gathered her soldiers for the assault, watched her speak to them. She did not promise them victory. She told them the truth. Most of them would probably not come back from this attack, but if they did not attack, they would reach the civilians. She asked them to stand with her, to be brave, to protect their families and their home. The soldiers did not question her. They took their weapons and followed her toward the positions. Watched from his position, the human soldiers charged forward with weapons firing. They moved together, covering each other, advancing slowly against the massive warrior force. The warriors were stronger and their weapons were more powerful, but the humans were organized and determined. They pushed forward meter by meter. Then saw something that changed everything. A human pilot named was flying close air support above the medical facility. She saw they were about to break through its advancing line. She saw that one more push would destroy the human assault. Piloted her small fighter aircraft directly at a cluster of warriors. She opened fire with her aircraft weapons, cutting them down, giving soldiers the space they needed to advance. But she was flying too low. She was in range of the anti-aircraft weapons. The fired and hits aircraft, saw the damage happen. The right wing of the aircraft was torn away. The aircraft was going to crash. Knew this. She had flown directly into danger knowing she might not survive. Managed to control the damaged aircraft for a few more seconds. She saw that ground assault needed one more push to break the defensive line. Flew her crippled aircraft into the center of the position and detonated the remaining weapons and fuel. The explosion was massive. It cleared an entire section of the defenders, giving soldiers the opening they needed. And her soldiers broke through the line. They reached the medical facility and secured the perimeter. To regroup. His aircraft fell to the ground in flaming pieces. Used his enhanced vision to scan the wreckage. He found still in the cockpit, moving weakly. She was alive but badly burned and hurt. A rescue team reached before the fires consumed the aircraft completely. They pulled her out and brought her to the medical facility. She would survive, though she would carry the scars of what she had done for the rest of her life. When came to after securing the medical facility, she was crying, but she was also standing, still fighting, still determined. "Gave everything to save our people," said. She knew she might die. She flew into danger anyway because we needed her too. This is what humans do. We do not let our fear stop us. We do not count the cost when the people we love are in danger. Felt something shift inside him. He had been taught that his species was superior because of strength and intelligence and advanced technology. But all the other humans had shown him something different. They had shown him that true strength came from being willing to sacrifice for others. True strength came from standing firm even when you were afraid. "Your species has something mine does not," said. "You have heart. You have the willingness to die for something greater than yourselves. This is why you survived long enough to leave your world. This is why you will survive this invasion." The fighting continued for 3 more days. They would attack and the humans and would hold the line. The cost was high. More soldiers died. More families lost people they loved. But they never broke. They never surrendered. They never abandoned the children and elderly people sheltering in the medical facility. Fought beside them and learned with every passing hour. He learned that being superior in strength and speed meant nothing if you did not have the courage to stand beside those weaker than yourself. He learned that humans could teach him things that no school had ever taught him. When recovered enough to walk, she came to the defensive line. She was moving slowly because of her injuries, but she was smiling, embraced her carefully, being mindful of her burns, put her hand on shoulder, and found himself standing with them, part of something that was no longer about inhumans. It was about people who had chosen to stand together against darkness. The final assault came on the 6th day of fighting. They had been regrouping and planning. They had lost many warriors in their previous attacks. Now they committed everything they had to one massive push. The command structure of the decided they would destroy the human colony or die in the attempt. Received intelligence reports from his fleet about the incoming attack. The numbers were staggering. They were bringing every soldier they had available. They were going to attack the entire defensive perimeter at the same time. There would be no weak points, no positions where the humans could rest. It would be relentless assault from all directions. Called a meeting with all the remaining military leaders. There were fewer now than when they had started. Many had fallen. The survivors were tired and wounded, but they were still standing. They still had fight left in them. "They are coming with everything," said simply. "We will probably not survive this attack, but we will not let them reach the civilians. We will give our lives if that is what is needed. That is what soldiers do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves." Was still alive, though he had bandages across his chest from a shrapnel wound. He nodded at its words. "We have 1 ammunition count left. After we use it, we will be fighting with whatever we can find. Rocks, knives, bare hands if necessary." "Then we will fight with rocks and knives," said from where she stood nearby. She was still healing from her injuries, but she had insisted on returning to duty. Her burns were painful and her movements were slow, but her eyes were bright with determination. "They are strong, but we are clever. We can find ways to hurt them even without advanced weapons." Stood and addressed the group. "I have calculated the odds. They are not in our favor. We are outnumbered. Our supplies are low. They are stronger and faster. By every logical measure, we should lose this battle. But logic does not account for what I have learned from fighting beside you. Logic does not account for human determination. Logic does not account for the fact that you will stand firm because you have decided this is worth dying for. I will stand with you to the end. That is my decision." The final battle began when the sun was highest in the sky. They came like a wave of black death, pouring down from the sky in their landing ships and advancing across the ground with weapons blazing. The sound was deafening. The ground shook. Fire and explosions covered the landscape. The human soldiers fought back with everything they had. Their weapons flashed and roared. They fell, one after another, but more always came. They seemed endless. As one warrior fell, 2 more took its place. The defensive line was pushed back meter by meter. The fighting became close and brutal. It became hand-to-hand combat where humans had to use their smaller size and intelligence against the superior strength. Fought with a ferocity that surprised even. The human sergeant had a wound that was getting worse, but he did not slow down. He did not stop fighting. He covered the retreat of younger soldiers, holding them back from the advancing. He was buying them time to reach stronger defensive positions. Then a warrior broke through the line and found isolated. The warrior raised its weapon, could not stop it. The blast would come and he would fall. Saw what was about to happen a half-second before it occurred. He moved with all the speed his species possessed. He put himself between and the blast. The energy hit him hard and threw him backward. Pain exploded through his left shoulder. His arm went numb. Pulled back to safety, he tore away part of his uniform to create a bandage for the wound. "You saved my life," said, his voice urgent and grateful. "You are my comrade," said simply. "I would do it again." Was flying reconnaissance when she spotted a critical position that was about to overrun the medical facility again. She called down coordinates to the ground forces and then made a hard choice. She piloted her damaged aircraft low and fast toward the position. Her weapons were nearly empty, but she had impact. She crashed her aircraft directly into the defensive line, destroying the position and buying the ground forces time to strengthen their defense. This time, ejected from the aircraft before the crash, she landed hard but alive. Soldiers grabbed her and pulled her to safety. She was hurt but still conscious. She had done it again, thrown herself into danger without hesitation. Was everywhere on the battlefield. She was not the strongest soldier. She could not match warriors in direct combat, but she had tactical brilliance and courage. She moved quickly between positions, understanding where they were going to attack next and shifting her limited forces to meet them. She blocked attacks that should have succeeded. She created openings that seemed impossible. By the end of the day, they had not broken through. They had not reached the civilians. The defensive line was battered and thin and barely holding together, but it was still there. The warriors were exhausted. Their commanders seemed surprised that the humans were still fighting. As darkness fell on the sixth day, realized something important. The humans were not winning because they were stronger. They were holding the line because they refused to break. Every time a soldier fell, another one stepped into their position. Every time they pushed them back, the humans pushed back harder. They did not fight because they thought they would win. They fought because they would rather die than see their home destroyed. Found during a brief moment of quiet, both of them were covered in blood and dirt and ash, had a fresh wound on her face, a thin cut across her cheek, had a badly damaged shoulder and could barely move his left arm. "We are still alive," said. Her voice was ragged from shouting orders all day. "We are still alive," agreed. "Your soldiers are remarkable. I have fought in many battles across many worlds. I have never seen warriors like yours. They do not fight because of training or duty. They fight because they have chosen to. That is something else entirely." Walked up to them, limping from his wound. Was leaning against him for support, also limping. The four of them stood together as the sun set on the colony they had fought to protect. They were still there, still standing, still fighting. They would attack again tomorrow. Everyone knew this. But tomorrow was tomorrow. Tonight they were alive. They had stopped an invasion that should have succeeded. They had held a line that should have broken. They had done the impossible through courage and determination and a refusal to give up. Put his functional arm around shoulders in a gesture he had learned from watching humans. It was something his species did not do, but it felt right in this moment. They stood together as night fell on the colony, warriors of different species, bound by blood and shared struggle, and the knowledge that they would stand together for whatever came next. They did not attack on the seventh day. Instead, they retreated. Their ships lifted off from the planet's surface. Their forces that remained alive gathered together and fled into space. The colony watched in silence as the invaders. At first, no one could believe it. Then celebrations began. Humans embraced each other. Soldiers put down their weapons and cried from exhaustion and relief. The colony had survived. Stood with and in the ruins of what had once been the colony center. Everything around them was destroyed. Buildings were burned. The ground was from weapons fire. The medical facility had been damaged but still stood. The civilians sheltering inside had survived. That was what mattered most. Walked to the center of the damaged area and planted a flag. It was the human flag, showing the colors and symbols of their world. Watched as the soldiers stood and saluted the flag. He did not understand all of this ritual, but he understood the meaning. The humans had stood their ground and had not been conquered. They had chosen to fight and they had survived. That flag represented that choice. The cost had been high. 173 human soldiers had died. 32 soldiers had fallen as well. Hundreds of civilians had been hurt in the bombardment of the colony. The settlement would need to be rebuilt. The farms would need to be replanted. The water systems had been damaged. It would take years to repair what they had destroyed in days. But the colony was alive. The children had survived. The future was still possible. Made a communication request to his fleet. Admiral Orr appeared on the screen and his expression was hard and cold. You were supposed to assess whether this colony was worth protecting. Instead, you have spent 6 days fighting with them. Our losses are severe. Your decision to commit our forces has cost us dearly. Admiral, I have assessed the situation, said calmly. This colony is more than worth protecting. These humans are not weak or limited. They are the strongest warriors I have ever served beside. They have the strength that comes from having something to protect. They have shown me that your measure of strength is wrong. Superior weapons and enhanced bodies are nothing compared to human determination and the willingness to sacrifice for others. I am requesting that the High Council form a permanent alliance with this human colony. Admiral Orr's expression did not change. I will deliver your recommendation to the High Council. They will make the final decision. The communication ended. Knew that his recommendation would be controversial. The High Council had always viewed humans as primitive and limited, but no longer cared what the High Council thought. He had learned something on this world that was more valuable than anything his species' technology could provide. That evening, there was a gathering at the medical facility. The healthy soldiers and the healers and the leaders of the colony all gathered together, gave a speech to honor those who had fallen. She spoke their names. She spoke about what they had done and what they had believed. She thanked them for giving their lives to protect the colony. She promised that the colony would continue and would grow and would make sure that their sacrifice meant something. Was healing well from her injuries. The medical team had bandaged her burns carefully. She would carry scars for the rest of her life, but she would live. When finished her speech, stood and asked for attention. I want to thank the commander and his soldiers for standing with us, said. We could not have survived this invasion without them. They came here thinking we were weak. We have shown them that we are not. We have shown them that humans have something special. We have the ability to come together and to stand firm even when we are afraid. We have shown them that courage is worth more than strength. The gathering applauded, heard the sound of human hands coming together. He did not fully understand the ritual, but he understood that it was meant to honor him and his soldiers. He stood and bowed in the way he had learned humans sometimes did. The applause grew louder. Approached after the gathering. The sergeant was moving better now, his wound beginning to heal. I want to invite you to stay here. As a permanent part of this colony, we need military leadership. We need weapons and knowledge. But more than that, I want you to stay because you are my friend. I would honor to accept, said. Joined them and limped over to stand with them as well. The 4 of them stood together as the night deepened. They had fought side by side. They had bled together. They had seen each other at their most vulnerable and had not looked away. They were bound now in a way that went beyond species or culture or anything else. They were warriors who had chosen to stand together. I am going to make a request to the High Council, told them. I will ask them to leave me here as a permanent liaison. I will ask them to form a true alliance with your colony. I will ask them to learn what I have learned, that humans are not weak, that you are not primitive, that you have strength that the Empire needs. Put her hand on shoulder. We would be honored to have you stay, to have you be part of our community, not just as a military commander but as a friend. 3 weeks later, received a response from the High Council. The response surprised him. The Council had voted to accept his recommendations. They would establish a formal alliance with the human colony. They would send supplies and reinforcements to help rebuild the settlement. They would begin cultural and technological exchanges. Most importantly, they accepted its request to remain on the colony as a permanent liaison. The decision had been influenced by a report from Admiral Orr. The Admiral had chosen to recommend approval of his request, or had realized that the future of the Empire lay not in remaining isolated and superior, but in forming bonds with other species, with humans. On the day that officially announced that he would remain on the colony, a ceremony was held. Stood with him as he planted a flag beside the human flag in the center of the colony. The two flags moved together in the wind, showing that they now stood as one. Thought back to the moment when he had first arrived at this colony. He had been so certain of his species' superiority. He had been so certain that humans were limited and primitive. He had been wrong about all of it. What he had learned on this world had changed him forever. Fear had gripped him when he first fought beside humans. Not fear of but fear that he would find humans to be weak and unworthy of his effort. That fear had been replaced by something far more powerful. It had been replaced by respect and friendship, and the knowledge that humans had taught him what true strength really was. Raised his hand and smiled reached out and squeezed his shoulder, nodded at him with the respect of one warrior for another. In that moment, knew that he had found something more valuable than any technology or weapon. He had found a place where he belonged. He had found people worth standing beside for the rest of his life. The colony would rebuild and grow. The alliance would become stronger, and would remain here learning and teaching, showing his people that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from advanced weapons or superior intellect, but from the simple willingness to stand beside someone else and to say, "I will not abandon you. I will not let you face this darkness alone. I will stand with you, and together we will prevail." That was what humans had taught him. That was what he would carry with him for the rest of his life.